Is Attack of the Clones the best Star Wars movie of all time?
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Is Jar Jar Binks secretly one of the best Star Wars characters that George Lucas ever created? Or is The Last Jedi undeserving of all of the hate that it's received from Star Wars fans?
Are you sure about that?
You know what? I can't even really say that one with a straight face. I'm sorry.
Well, let's be nice.
In today's video, I'm going to be reading your controversial Star Wars takes and deciding for myself whether or not I think your takes are truly hot or not. Let's get right into it. First off, we have protagonist 4302. Attack of the Clones was probably the best Star Wars movie, not counting 4 to 6. If you consider the decent yet intricate plot, monstrous world building / character building, cast, maybe if we ignore Anakin and Padme a bit, battle scenes, and of course, sand. Now, if there's one thing I know about sand, it's this.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Right out the gate, I definitely got to say that this is a hot take. Even if you're a prequel fan, I know a lot of people find this one to be the least enjoyable. I think George Lucas was a tad too unfiltered when it came to the direction of this movie, because I feel like there's really nobody in the writer's room that would shut him down and be like, you know what, maybe having these Anakin and Padme scenes where they're awkwardly meeting together for the first time in, 10 years, and she compliments him on how much he's grown, and he looks at her in that like really creepy way that dude at the Wawa gas station looks at you when you're just trying to pay for your bill. This film was George Lucas all the way, and that's something that people either hate or really like. And I find myself right in the middle, because while I do have several problems with this film, I think especially after experiencing Disney Star Wars, where it feels like there was no coherent vision and every single thing was just the writers and producers and directors and Kathleen Kennedy just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. I like the idea that even if it's one single vision that may suck in some people's eyes, it's still one coherent vision. It's George all the way. I think also what makes the Attack of the Clones a bit better, in my opinion, is the animated show, The Clone Wars. Because once you watch that all the way through and you get really invested in those characters, you kind of look at the characters back in episode 2 in a little bit more of a better light. At least in my opinion, that's what I experienced. So while I definitely don't agree that Attack of the Clones is the greatest Star Wars movie of all time, I definitely don't think it's one of the worst. That honor goes to the sequel trilogy.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
Movie Time Minute says, Star Wars The Phantom Menace may have been a hot mess, but it had one of the best lightsaber fights in all of Star Wars, and had arguably the best music with Duel of the Fates. And Darth Maul from that movie is arguably the best villain outside of Vader that we've had in all of Star Wars. Not to mention how good the casting for that movie was. So with all of that taken into account, I believe Episode 1 was the most underrated Star Wars film. You know what, man? I think that this is not a hot take, and that's because I agree with you. Most of the time when I have a discussion with someone who talks about how much they don't like The Phantom Menace, I usually have them list all the things that they like. And like you said, most of the time they'll say they like Duel of the Fates. They like that entire fight between Maul, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan. They'll say that they really appreciate the relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon as Master and Padawan. They also bring up that Darth Maul was an exceptional villain, even though we didn't get to see him very much. And I know you didn't mention it on here, but the pod racing scene is actually very underrated. So when I hear them say all of that, I just look at them and go, you do realize you just described like 70% of the movie, right? And if the worst things that you can come up with are Jar Jar Binks and young Anakin Skywalker are annoying, then I don't think that holds up well when you're looking at the film as a whole. I cannot stress enough that this movie was released in 1999. Do you want to know how many movies in 1999 had the same level of CGI and visual effects that this film had? I'll definitely wait. Because George Lucas at the end of the day is a visionary above all else. He was always trying to push the boundaries of what he could do and exceed the limitations placed before him. And yeah, I agree with you, man. I think 3 of the best casted characters in Star Wars are in this film. Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, Ray Park as Darth Maul, and Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. The fact that George Lucas started out like this with all hits and no misses really speaks to how strong his vision and passion was for making these movies.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
BingeMeister6920 says, Jar Jar Binks was a breath of fresh air and a needed balance to the Force when compared with other characters in Phantom Menace, who are overwhelmingly human and stoic or nearly emotionless, especially Natalie Portman. Jar Jar Binks as a character is a very hot button topic for many Star Wars fans all over the world, and I think it really comes down to what era of Star Wars did you find yourself to be a part of the most. As a guy in my mid-20s, I grew up right around the time this movie came out, and it absolutely was made for me. Did I care that Jar Jar Binks was silly? No, because it was entertaining and I enjoyed it. Did we really have to have an extended scene of him stepping in poop? No. But when you look at his presence and the amount of screen time he actually spends being featured in the film, I think he's only got like 5 minutes of actual devoted screen time. And when you look at the 2 hours worth of movie, that's really not that big of a deal. 80s Kid from the 90s says, what is your favorite Star Wars animated show? What is your favorite prequel? And why are Filoni, Favreau, as well as Gilroy the only people at Lucasfilm who understand Star Wars? Ahsoka seems to be the perfect Star Wars show that honors the original trilogy. Thoughts? May the Force be with you. Well, first I gotta say, may the Force be with you as well, 80s Kid from the 90s.
The Force will be with you, always.
My favorite Star Wars animated show is Star Wars The Clone Wars by far. While it has a couple of story arcs and singular episodes that I don't necessarily enjoy as much as others, the Clone Wars animated show felt like it actually deserved to exist. Think about it, Dave Filoni was hired by George Lucas because Lucas already had a story that he wanted to tell, and he wanted to do it in animated form. And he went out and got the guy that he thought would be the best fit for the job, and he got the right dude, 110%. Filoni was able to bring his experience from The Last Airbender and translate that over into the world of Star Wars so efficiently. I don't believe that Dave Filoni is the savior of Star Wars for the future, but I do believe that at the very least, he has a passion for storytelling and he has a passion for Star Wars. If you put those two together, I do believe that Filoni is the best fit for being the visionary of future Star Wars projects.
2 hours later.
Hello there, it's Editor Jonah. And I just want to let you know, 80s Kid from the 90s, that I forgot to respond to your question asking me what my favorite prequel was. The answer to that is Revenge of the Sith. All day, every day. I believe it is the best Star Wars movie of all time, if you're not counting Empire Strikes Back. All right, catch you later.
Dark Movie says, Star Wars is really boring. I found the old one good, but now with the movies plus the TV shows, they're just getting boring and I really don't care about Star Wars anymore. I don't think I'll be watching anything from Star Wars anytime soon. Dark Movies, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I guess I do have to pick one, so I'll say this is a hot take. Mostly because even though Disney Star Wars has been tripping itself up and falling multiple times, Star Wars still has somewhat of a strong presence in the modern world. But if you're one of those people that grew up with the original trilogy and maybe the prequels, and to you that was where Star Wars peaked, I could definitely understand why you would find the last 5 to 10 years of Star Wars to be bland and unoriginal. It actually does make me genuinely sad to read this, because I remember back when Star Wars was the coolest thing in the world. Do y'all remember back in the old days where you'd go to Target or Walmart or Toys R Us and they would have these entire aisles dedicated to Star Wars toys, Star Wars merch? My favorite was the lightsabers that were actually heavy duty and not cheaply made, where you could pull that sucker out and you could hit a tree with that thing and it would never break. But what do you get these days? Just like a 3-foot section of an aisle with like 3 total action figures and a lightsaber that breaks by the time you get it home. Oh, and did I forget the $70 collectible set that nobody asked for from the sequel trilogy? Yeah, that's pretty much all you're gonna get. And I think, yeah, part of it is because of the different generation that we live in these days, but I also do believe that just the love and the desire for all things Star Wars has really started to subside over the years. I'm really sad to hear that. See For Yourself says, Star Wars / Disney is throwing away money by not turning the Visions shorts into series. People have responded incredibly well to many, if not all of the shorts. Fans have different preferences, of course, of which shorts they like more than others, but that just means that there's variety and something for everyone. It makes no sense that we have not gotten the 9th Jedi series yet. And even though Tatooine Rhapsody isn't for me, you can't tell me that there aren't a bunch of kids out there who would absolutely love to follow that band around. Into the Stars, The Pit, and Bandits of Golok could bring in a lot of dollars from minority communities. So why wouldn't Star Wars make these popular shorts into series? Number 1, contracts. I don't believe Disney would want to pay these studios a fair share of the profits, which also leads to my second point. 2, embarrassment, pride, and credit. In my opinion, these Vision shorts are better than almost everything that Star Wars has put out. Disney doesn't want the jokes and the memes coming from the internet saying things like, these other studios are doing Star Wars better than Disney. So instead of giving us what a lot of us fans want, they keep pumping out Skywalker era content in hopes that something will catch on. The outsourced studios making better Star Wars content than in-house writers, who they're not even paying well, is not a good look for them. I could go on and on about why this hasn't happened yet, but I'll spare you the rest of my 4-hour dissertation. Honestly, man, as much as I want to say this is a hot take, I'm gonna say it's not, because again, I agree with you. This is spot on. I gotta be upfront with you. I can't cover this very well, mostly because I'm really not a fan of the Vision shorts. Now, hold up. Let me explain myself. It's not that I don't like the Vision shorts. I personally am just not a fan of anime.
I would choose my next words very carefully if I were you.
I've tried to get into it throughout all of the years. I've had several friends give me recommendations to try different forms of anime to find what I like, and I maybe would find 1 or 2 episodes that I get invested in, and then it would just all fall apart. And I'm not taking anything away from those studios that you mentioned. I feel like those studios have way more creativity with their pinky finger than any of Lucasfilm has right now. So on that point, I completely agree with you. Unfortunately, it does seem like the Vision shorts do have a specific audience in mind when Lucasfilm agreed to put this out. And yeah, there's some people who may not like anime but enjoy it because it's Star Wars. It's really hard for Lucasfilm to justify doing more with that because, again, if it's not going to make them money, they're not interested. Plus, like you said, it's not even like they pay their workers anyway, so why would they want to shell out even more money to hire these third-party companies? Disney doing something ethical? Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen.
I know how to change the way the public thinks of me. I'll buy every media outlet in town.
Hannah Mitchell 2579 says, Padme Amidala is overrated. What did you say?
This is outrageous. It's unfair.
I'm sorry, guys. I need a moment. I felt this disturbance in the Force. Like millions of 18 to 25-year-old homeschool men just all screamed out in unison and then suddenly were silenced. How could you do this? Princess Leia is underrated. I feel like Princess Leia's character and spunkiness far outshine Padme. I love her dynamic with Han Solo. In my opinion, Padme and Anakin never come close to that kind of chemistry. I never understood why so many people gravitated towards Padme. Maybe it was just all the guys in my homeschool group. I don't know. Well, I am unashamed to say that I was massively crushing on Natalie Portman when I was a little kid, and it was all because of her portrayal of Padme.
Skip. But when does this game get good?
But wait, I was crushing on Padme, but I was also homeschooled. Yeah? That checks out. I'm gonna say that this is a hot take. So once again, you're looking at the War of Generations here. A lot of people who grew up with the original trilogy is going to have Leia as their favorite, but a lot of people around my age will probably say that they prefer Padme.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
But I actually do believe you have a very strong case for why Princess Leia is superior than Padme Amidala. But only if you're talking live action. I feel like Padme gets a major boost when it comes to her appearance in the Clone Wars TV show, but if we're going with just live action, I do think that Leia is portrayed a little bit better. She's street smart, she's wise, but yet she also stands up for herself and never, ever gives up. And I think the character of Princess Leia as a whole is a very good representation to little girls of how to carry yourself with dignity, but yet also be able to stand up for yourself. And you're right, I think her relationship with Han Solo is one of the best things in the original trilogy.
I love you.
I know.
Padme, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily get as lucky when it comes to her depiction of the love story with Anakin Skywalker.
You're so beautiful.
It's only because I'm so in love.
No, no, it's because I'm so in love with you.
That's cringe.
Hold me. Like you did by the lake on Naboo. So long ago when there was nothing but our love.
Regardless, I think both characters brought significant value to the world of Star Wars. And if you were asking me a couple years ago who I would pick, I would probably go with Padme. But you know what? I'm gonna end this section out by saying I actually agree with you and I think Princess Leia is underrated. All of those comments were gathered off of one of my community posts. And if you're interested in being featured in one of my next videos, keep an eye out for more of these in the future. And if you have any recommendations for what topics you'd like covered in the future, leave them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. But with all that out of the way, I wanna thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.